Hey everybody, it's Sean here, and I'm here to give you a introduction and sort of refresh on Adobe InDesign. We're going to be going through building some mock projects to sort of get you guys familiar with the software. To start out, I'd like to make sure that everybody is on the same version that I am, so just make sure your InDesign is up to date. I'm on 15.1.2, so as long as you're up at 15, everything should sort of be streamlined and be really similar. So the first thing that I want to talk about when you open up Adobe InDesign is this sort of home page, home panel. This is where you can go to create a new document. You can open previously built documents, and it gives you a snapshot of things that you've recently built. You can sort these obviously by different mechanisms if you'd like. You can have them as thumbnails or as a list version, totally up to you. And obviously, to be able to get going, you have to be able to hit the create new button. This is all very standard, but better safe than sorry when reviewing all of this sort of stuff. So first off, when you open up a new document, the first thing you can sort of see is you get hit with all these different sort of documents that you had recently created. There is the option to view saved document presets that you might have created, and then we move over to print, web, and mobile. The preset section of these panels are really intuitive and really great. They're sort of the absolute standard when it comes to document sizes, so you have everything from 8.5 by 11 to 8.5 by 14, 11 by 17, so on and so on. You even have things for trade paperbacks, and for some reason even CD sleeves. They got everything. You can also take a look at some of their web preset templates, just really nice things to sort of help get you going in those different formats. And then finally, they even have all of the mobile options that you could possibly wish for. And because this is cloud-based software, they can update things all the time, which is really useful. On the right-hand side of this panel, you can see that we have the ability to create our own documents completely from scratch and have a little bit more control over things like page width, page height, number of pages, what page number you'd like the document to start on, the ability to have facing pages to create spreads, primary text frames for having text show up immediately on your document. You also have options for things like columns and column gutter. Let me just hit preview here so that we can actually get a better look at what it is some of these settings take care of. So like I was saying, you also have the option to have multiple columns. We can adjust the size of the column gutter straight within the new dialog box, which is pretty great. I'm gonna leave that at 1/4 inch. And then we also have things down here that are called bleed and slug. Hopefully this is a bit of a review for you guys, but bleed is the space on the outside of the page that is absolutely necessary when you are working with double-sided materials, or pretty much any type of design when it comes to graphic design and Adobe InDesign. So you can obviously uncheck the link icon, and we can adjust the size of certain things on one side of the sheet as opposed to the other three, or you could adjust each one individually if you'd like. Finally, slug. This is a feature mostly taken advantage of by production houses and printing printing companies. Rarely will you as a designer actually need to adjust this measurement, so we typically just tend to leave it at 0 inches, and I'll just link that arrow right there. You can also pre-label your document right up here, which is a very smart idea just because it kind of gets you into the habit of not working on documents that are called untitled for the duration of your design process. So if we hit create, there, boom, we have a document that has all of the parameters that we had just set. It has a primary text frame, which we can fill with placeholder text if we'd like. Let me just do that really quick. Fill with placeholder text. There we go. You can tell that it is, let me just come back up to page number 1 here. Sorry, I created a second page. You can tell we have a document that is called test, all of our columns. placeholder text, things like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through some of the really basic sort of functionalities of some of the menus and tools that we have available to us within InDesign that are sort of just at an arm's reach. I've been deleting some of the text just to sort of make some extra room here for the ability to sort of play around a little bit. So if we start on the left-hand side, down on this panel here, you see we have options for things like selection tool and direct selection tool. This is also where we find our type tool, which is T on your keyboard. I'm a big shortcuts guy, so for me, the less my fingers come off the page or come off the keyboard, the happier I'll be. We can press T and go in and start editing some of our type right away if we'd want to, or we can click and drag out text boxes and start just typing away. Don't mind me, I'm typing on a smaller keyboard than I'm used to, so sometimes I make mistakes. So underneath the type tool, if you click and hold, you have the option to use type on a path. That's typically what these little arrow icons mean underneath each tool. And going down the list, we have our line tool, which is extremely useful for creating consistently thick lines, which is slightly different than if we were to use the rectangle tool and try and draw out rectangles that matched the same width as our line did. Let me just go up and fill that guy there with black. The difference being you can obviously extend and expand the shape of a rectangle. With a line, you're pretty much adjusting the stroke and whatnot. Obviously, basics here being the pen tool and the pencil tool, similar to what you would find in Illustrator and Photoshop. Nothing crazy there. One of the other things to make note of is the two differences between the rectangle tool and the rectangle frame tool. The rectangle frame tool acts as a placeholder for information. You can place imagery or other design elements within your frame tools. We have rectangle, ellipse, and polygon. And similar to the shape tools, we have the same ones here. The only difference being that shapes you can fill with color swatches, with patterns, you can outline them, you can create gradients to fill them up with, all sorts of different things. Sorry, I'm just applying some effects here just to showcase what I'm talking about. And then as we move on down the line, you have things like scissors to be able to create cool effects within shapes and things like that. Your rotate tool, so if I wanted to, I could rotate this guy, and it's obviously anchored up on this top left point here. You can adjust the anchor point just by clicking anywhere within the shape, and then sort of start your rotations there. And then we have gradients, which is absolutely phenomenal tool we'll be getting into later on throughout the course. Sticky notes allow you to, leave notes. If you're working on a project that requires multiple designers to be working on the same file, this is a very handy feature. Your eyedropper, your hand tool, magnifying glass, etc. Now, if you've noticed, I've been using these two boxes up here to change color and stroke. They're also represented down here as well. It just depends on which one you like to go to more so than the next. You can use this to easily switch the color values between both attributes. So that pretty much covers the left-hand side. Now, up on the top, there's kind of a few things going on up here that's really interesting. If I bring these shapes back, you'll notice that this menu up here really pertains to shapes, shape dynamics, shape attributes, a lot of mathematics around the objects that you're working with. You also get some align features. You can center things on the page. You can center them again on the page, left align, right align, etc. We can also evenly distribute items. Just depends on what sort of alignment you're going for. And then in the middle here, you'll have your text wrap options. And this, if anybody grew up using Microsoft Word, you're pretty familiar with. Right now, the text wrap is set to none, but we can set it to be in the middle, and you can see how now the words start to wrap around our shapes. But I'm just going to get rid of that feature for now. We have things like effects, which allow you to quickly apply certain, well, basic effects, really, to your objects, to your text boxes, whatever it is that you're working on designing, and so forth. But if we go into actually starting to edit text, you'll notice that this entire top menu here changes to something completely different. It's one thing that you should note, because I'm working on a screen that has a very high resolution, I can have a lot more information visible to me on screen at any given point. So you guys might only be able to see from sort of one end of the type section to the other. And then if you wanted to view the paragraph information, you would have to click on this paragraph icon underneath the character formatting icon in the top left, and it will switch your menu back and forth. In the type menu, we can obviously go in and we can start formatting bits of text so that we can change the character attributes. Maybe I want things to be Century Gothic. There we go. We can obviously change type size. We can increase the leading. We can kern and track out some stuff, which is nice. We can adjust the kerning to be optical. You have things like case settings, all caps or small caps. You could do superscript or subscript, underline or strike through. All these options that hopefully are just review for you guys, but figured we'll just cover them anyways. Switching over to the paragraph tab, you have your alignments right here. We can do alignments with a rag, alignments that are justified. You have options for indenting your entire columns, indenting your first paragraph, etc. Same with on the right hand side. You have these cool features for space before and after paragraphs, and don't worry, these are all things that we're going to get into as we work together throughout some mock demonstrations and some mock projects to make you guys much more familiar with everything that's going on here. You can add things like bullet points and numbering. You can add borders to certain things. And realistically, this top panel is incredibly powerful, and a lot of the information on it syncs up really nicely with some of our palettes that we have over here. Primarily things like paragraph styles and character styles, things like swatches and color and stroke. A lot of these menus will be very similar to what you will experience or have experienced in other programs like Illustrator. Some of them are specific to InDesign, like these character styles and these paragraph styles, and as well as things like pages, where you can see that you can add brand new pages to create spreads. You can create master pages that have controlling attributes for all of your document. We have our layers panel where we can, add new layers to things. We can maybe call a new layer something like shapes, and we can go about dragging these shapes from layer 1. Actually, sorry, we're going to call layer 2 shapes 2. And so we can drag our shapes from the text layer, there we go, into our shapes layer, and just keep our document nice and organized like we're used to. Now, if you're wondering how to get some of these panels open onto your sort of right hand side here. The Windows section is where you'll find a lot of these guys, and one of the biggest things that you can do when you're sort of opening up a program for the first time after a while is make sure you have reset your workspace. I don't know if some of you might have gotten very comfortable in InDesign last time you used it. Maybe you created a custom workspace for yourself that worked really well. If you did, fantastic. For the purposes of our class though, I'm going to always ask that we start from Essentials Classic and that we reset Essentials Classic. By doing those two things, we will always have the same layout. We'll always be able to work from the same starting point, and it'll just help to streamline everything and make it much easier if you have any questions about where certain things can be. From here, you could easily open up another window by going to, let's say, paragraph styles we'd like to have. So window, type tools, you can have your paragraph alignment right there. We could go under styles and hit paragraph styles, and now we have our paragraph styles and our character styles, and all we have to do is plop them right on the right hand side, and they're mounted there for us to use throughout our projects. Now, the rest of these menus up here should be pretty standard, things like file, where you have save and open, place and export, some PDF settings, which we will definitely be getting into. Edit, your typical copy and paste. You can find spell check, find and change. Layout options where you can control how many pages are in your documents, things like margins and columns if we'd like to go and adjust what our starting layout looked like. We have options here to really get into typography, font styles, sizes, things like that. You can see that we have character and paragraph styles right here. That's how important they are. They're in like 3 different places. If we started working with a lot of objects, there's all the commands that you would need here in order to deal with that. Building tables and charts within InDesign, there's an entire menu. Your view mode, this is pretty important to know actually, because there's things like display performance. How sort of well do you want your screen to perform? If you're sort of running low on space on your computer, or you're working in a really big document that is taking up a lot of space, you can switch your display performance to fast quality, and it will dumb down a lot of the information. On the other side of the spectrum, maybe you really need to have a very detailed view of what it is you're working on. You can switch it to high performance. It takes a little bit more out of your computer, but you'll be able to see a lot more detail in your work than if you left it on even just standard or typical display. Cool. Just some basic keyboard shortcuts that I can share with you, things like Command A for selecting things. So if we have our type activated, Command A selects all of your lettering. Obviously Command C can copy, Command X can cut, and Command V can paste it again. T for type tool. If you ever want to get out of your working preview area, if you hit W, it actually transfers you into a sort of, I guess, a preview mode, so that it gets rid of all of the bounding boxes and all the technical noise, and it lets you see your actual work in a more dynamic way that lets you sort of actually see what it could potentially look like. Other than that, a lot of the sort of in-depth look at the menus and the tools and the shortcuts, they're going to come as we work through this course. I hope that this was a bit of a refresh just to get you opening the software back up and touching some of these tools that you might have put down in the spring. With that being said, we're going to take a look in our next video at some of our preferences that we can optimize, and just how to set you guys off on the best possible foot. So I'll see you guys there.